There is a jar that costs less than $5 to make. 8 cloves of garlic, raw honey, and time. That is all. No factory, no prescription, no subscription bottle arriving every month. Just a small glass jar sitting quietly on a kitchen counter, changing day by day, while most people walk past it without understanding what is happening inside. And once you understand the chemistry inside that jar, you begin to understand something uncomfortable. Welcome to Buried Fixes. Not that garlic replaces modern medicine. It doesn't. Not that honey can cure every infection. It cannot. But that some of the oldest household remedies were not superstition at all. They were chemistry before chemistry had a name. And this one begins with a compound so unstable that it can burn your tongue, kill bacteria in a petri dish, and then vanish before your bloodstream can make full use of it. That compound is allicin. And the secret is not just garlic. The secret is what happens when garlic is crushed, drowned in raw honey, and left alone long enough for nature to rebuild it. During wartime, before antibiotics were widely available in many field conditions, doctors and medics often had to depend on antiseptics, crude wound care, and whatever antimicrobial materials they could access. Garlic became famous in parts of Eastern Europe as Russian penicillin, not because it was equal to penicillin, but because people observed something real. Crushed garlic had a measurable effect against microbes. But here is the part most people never hear. Raw garlic is powerful, but it is also brief. Its most famous active compound does not sit inside the clove waiting for you. An intact garlic clove contains almost no allicin. What it contains are two separate things: allicin, a sulfur-containing compound, and allicinois, an enzyme. They live in separate compartments of the plant cell. The moment you cut, crush, or chew the clove, the cell walls rupture. The two meet. And within seconds, allicinois converts allicin into allicin. That sharp burn on your tongue, that smell that fills the kitchen, that is not flavor alone. That is chemistry happening in real time. Allicin has shown broad antimicrobial activity in laboratory research, including activity against resistant bacteria. In one study of allicin preparations against MRSA, many strains were inhibited at concentrations around 16 to 32 micrograms per milliliter. That is why garlic attracted serious scientific attention. It was never just folklore. But there is a problem. A major one. Allicin is unstable. It breaks down quickly. It reacts easily. Heat damages it. Time changes it. Digestion changes it again. So when someone says, just eat raw garlic and it will work like an antibiotic, they are skipping the most important part of the story. Your mouth may feel it. Your stomach may feel it. But your bloodstream may receive only a fraction of what people imagine. And that is where the old honey-garlic ferment becomes interesting, because the goal is not to preserve allicin forever. The goal is to transform it. When crushed garlic sits in raw honey, something slow begins. The honey pulls moisture out of the garlic. The thick honey thins into a syrup. Tiny bubbles appear. The sharp bite of the garlic softens. The cloves change color. The harshness fades. And inside that jar, unstable sulfur compounds begin shifting into more stable forms. One of the most important families of compounds associated with aged garlic is S-allyl cysteine, often called SAC. SAC is not the same as allicin. It is water-soluble, more stable, and is used as a marker compound in aged garlic preparations. Oregon State University's Linus Pauling Institute notes that aged garlic extracts are standardized to S-allyl L-cysteine content because aging changes garlic's original chemistry into more stable organosulfur compounds. That is the whole point. Raw garlic is a spark. Fermented garlic honey is a slow fire. And traditional cultures understood this long before modern supplement companies sold aged garlic in capsules. Korean households, Japanese farms, Chinese kitchens, Eastern European folk medicine. They all arrived at the same observation. Garlic becomes different when time gets involved. The clove that begins as sharp, hot, and aggressive becomes mellow, dark, almost sweet. The honey that begins as a simple golden syrup becomes infused with sulfur compounds, acids, and the taste of something older than a recipe. At 30 days, the jar is alive. At 3 months, it is deeper. At 6 months, it is something else entirely. By then, the garlic has softened. The honey pours easily. The flavor has moved away from raw fire and toward something rich, savory, and almost medicinal. Not medicinal in the pharmaceutical sense. Medicinal in the old sense, a food that sits at the border between kitchen and remedy. Now, this is where we have to be honest. The internet loves to say that garlic honey replaces antibiotics. That is dangerous. If you have pneumonia, sepsis, a spreading wound infection, a kidney infection, meningitis, or any serious bacterial disease, you do not need a kitchen experiment. You need medical care. Antibiotics save lives, but that does not mean every antibiotic prescription is necessary. The CDC states that at least 28% of antibiotics prescribed in outpatient settings in the United States are considered unnecessary. Most colds, many sore throats, and many upper respiratory infections are viral, which means antibiotics do nothing against the cause. And that is the real conflict, not garlic versus medicine, but common sense versus overprescription. A $5 jar will never replace emergency care, but it may replace the habit of reaching for a pill every time your throat feels scratchy. It may replace doing nothing while waiting for a cold to run its course. It may replace the idea that immune support has to arrive in a plastic bottle with a $30 label. The evidence is not perfect, and it should not be exaggerated. A well-known trial by Peter Josling studied 146 people over 12 weeks and found fewer colds in the garlic supplement group than in the placebo group. But a Cochrane review later noted that the evidence base was limited because it relied heavily on that single trial. In other words, garlic is promising, but not proven enough to make wild medical claims. That distinction matters, because the truth is more powerful than the hype. Garlic has real bioactive compounds. Honey has real antimicrobial and soothing properties. Together, they have shown interesting results in laboratory settings. In one study, a combination of garlic and honey produced zones of inhibition ranging from 18 to 35 millimeters against tested pathogens, outperforming either ingredient alone in that setup. But a petri dish is not a human body. Laboratory results are signals, not guarantees. Still, the signal is worth paying attention to, because this is not a product invented by an influencer. It is a method that existed before wellness marketing found it. And the reason it never became a billion-dollar drug is simple. You cannot easily patent 8 cloves of garlic in honey. You cannot build a monopoly around a jar that anyone can make at home. You cannot charge $90 for something a grandmother can prepare with a cutting board, a spoon, and patience. Modern medicine depends on standardization. That is necessary. A doctor needs controlled doses, tested safety, and predictable outcomes. But the business side of medicine depends on something else: recurring revenue. A prescription can generate revenue. A refill can generate revenue. A branded supplement can generate revenue. But a jar on your counter, that is a problem. Not because it cures everything, but because it reminds people that not every solution begins in a laboratory. Some begin in a pantry. Here is how to make it properly. You need 8 fresh cloves of garlic. They should be firm, heavy for their size, and free from green sprouts. If a clove has a green shoot in the middle, it is older. You can still eat it, but for this preparation, fresh is better. You need 1 clean glass jar. An 8-ounce mason jar is ideal. Wash it with hot water and let it air dry. Do not use harsh antibacterial residue inside the jar. You are not trying to sterilize life out of the process. You are trying to create a clean environment where the right transformation can happen. And you need raw honey. This matters. Pasteurized honey has been heated. Raw honey contains more natural enzymes and wild microbial life, though the exact activity varies from batch to batch. Look for honey labeled raw, unfiltered, and unpasteurized. If it only says pure honey, that does not necessarily mean raw. Peel the 8 cloves, then crush each one lightly with the flat side of a knife. Do not mince them into paste. Do not leave them whole. Crush them enough to break the cell walls. Then wait 10 minutes. This step is not decorative. It is the chemistry window. Those 10 minutes allow allinase to convert allin into alladin before the cloves go into the honey. If you throw whole cloves directly into the jar, you get a weaker reaction. The old kitchen rule, crush garlic and let it rest, is not superstition. It is enzymatic timing. After 10 minutes, place the crushed cloves into the jar. Pour raw honey over them until they are fully covered. Leave at least ½ inch of space at the top. Do not fill the jar to the brim. Fermentation produces gas. The honey will loosen. The mixture may bubble. It needs room. Close the lid loosely. Not airtight. During the first week, flip the jar once a day. Garlic floats, and any clove sitting above the honey line can dry out or invite mold. Flip the jar, let the honey coat everything, then loosen the lid again to release pressure. By day 3 or 4, you may see tiny bubbles. Good. By the end of the first week, the honey may look thinner. Good. That is moisture moving from the garlic into the honey. The environment is changing. After the first week, flip it every 2 or 3 days. At 30 days, you have a usable ferment. At 3 months, it is stronger and smoother. At 6 months, it becomes the kind of jar people remember. Dark cloves, thin honey, deep aroma, less bite, more body. Now, how do you use it? Think of it as food first, not a drug. For general seasonal support, many people take 1 small clove with a teaspoon of the honey in the morning. Others stir the honey into warm water or tea, but not boiling water, because high heat can damage delicate compounds. At the first sign of a sore throat, some people let a teaspoon of the honey sit at the back of the tongue for 30 to 60 seconds before swallowing. The point is contact. Honey already has a long traditional use for soothing the throat. Garlic-infused honey adds another layer of flavor and compounds, but it still remains a supportive food, not a guaranteed treatment. And now, the safety rules. They are not optional. First, never give honey, raw or fermented, to a child under 12 months old. The CDC warns that honey can contain spores of the bacteria that cause infant botulism, and infants are especially vulnerable. Second, if you take warfarin, aspirin, clopidogrel, or any blood-thinning medication, talk to a healthcare professional before taking garlic preparations daily. Garlic supplements may increase bleeding risk, especially around surgery or when combined with anticoagulants. Third, if you are preparing for surgery, do not casually consume large amounts of garlic as medicine. Tell your doctor what you are taking. Fourth, if you see fuzzy mold, colored growth, or anything that looks raised and hairy, discard the batch. Do not scrape it off. Throw it out. Fifth, if the jar smells rotten, putrid, or alcoholic in a harsh way, Do not use it. A good garlic honey ferment smells sharp, sweet, garlicky, tangy, and rich. It should not smell like garbage. Some fermenters check pH for extra safety. Clostridium botulinum cannot grow and produce toxin below pH 4.6, but home ferments can vary, especially when low-acid ingredients are mixed. Honey is often acidic, but not every jar is identical. When in doubt, use pH strips. Add a small splash of raw apple cider vinegar for extra acidity, or keep the batch refrigerated after the first active stage. Food safety matters more than romance. This is where old knowledge and modern science should meet, not fight. The old world gave us the method. Modern science gives us the caution. The old world said, "This helps." Modern science asks, how, when, how much, and for whom? Both questions matter, because the most dangerous person is not the skeptic. It is the believer who refuses limits. Garlic honey is not magic, but it is also not nothing. It is a low-cost, biologically active food made from 2 ingredients with long histories and measurable properties. It is simple enough for a kitchen, complex enough for a laboratory, and cheap enough to make the modern wellness industry uncomfortable. That is why this jar matters. Not because it defeats medicine, but because it defeats helplessness. It gives people a ritual, a preparation, a way to participate in their own health before panic begins. 8 cloves, 1 jar, raw honey, 10 minutes of waiting, 6 weeks minimum, 6 months if you want the real transformation. And when the season changes, when the air gets cold, when the first scratch appears in your throat, you will not be reaching for something mysterious. You will be reaching for something you made yourself, something ancient, something alive, something modern science is still trying to explain fully. They did not forget remedies like this because they failed. They forgot them because they were too ordinary to sell. And sometimes the most powerful things are not hidden in secret laboratories. They are sitting in plain sight, on a kitchen counter, inside a small glass jar, waiting